Warren Hughes was 42 and spent most mornings wearing a reflective delivery vest in the cold streets of Columbus, Ohio. People who saw him loading freight into an aging Ford F-15 assumed he was a man life had already passed by. Even his wife believed it. Warren carried coffee in a stained thermos, used a cracked Samsung phone, and packed lunch in folded brown paper bags. What Vanessa Hughes didn't know was that she walked past Warren's company headquarters every single morning on Broad Street without recognizing the man who owned it. Then the elevator doors opened on the 28th floor. Vanessa stepped out beside Trevor Callahan and saw Warren standing at the head of the boardroom table. Before we continue, drop your country and local time in the comments. I always like seeing where people are watching from. And if you enjoy stories about quiet people proving everyone wrong without shouting, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's story gets even colder. Sunday dinners at Megan and Scott Doyle's house always smelled expensive. Garlic butter, smoked rosemary, oak from the wine rack Scott kept lit behind glass like a jewelry display. The kind of house designed less for comfort and more for reminding visitors how much the mortgage cost. Warren Hughes parked his faded Ford F-150 between Scott's black BMW X7 and Megan's white Range Rover Sport. Rainwater dripped from rust forming around the truck's rear wheel well. Warren shut the door carefully because the hinge had started sticking in winter. Through the front window, he could already see Scott holding court in the kitchen, laughing too loudly. One hand wrapped around a crystal whiskey glass. The television above the fireplace played a muted NFL recap while jazz drifted through hidden ceiling speakers. Vanessa stepped out beside Warren without waiting for him. Her heels clicked sharply against the stone walkway. "You could have at least washed the truck," she said quietly. Warren looked at the streaks of road salt along the doors. "I worked late." "That's kind of the point." She walked ahead before he answered. Inside, Megan hugged Vanessa immediately. "There she is," Megan said, "the only successful Hughes." Vanessa laughed. Scott shook Warren's hand with the loose grip men used when they already decided another man ranked below them. "Still moving boxes around Ohio?" Scott asked. "Something like that." Scott smirked. "Hey, honest work." The phrase landed exactly the way Warren expected. Not respect. Pity disguised as politeness. Dinner started 20 minutes later around a 12-seat walnut table that Scott mentioned the price of twice before appetizers arrived. The conversation moved where it always moved. Money, property, vacations. People Scott considered beneath him. "I'm telling you," Scott said, cutting into a dry-aged ribeye, "the market in Scottsdale is insane right now. One client made $400,000 in 6 months. Megan leaned toward Vanessa. "You guys should really start thinking bigger. You can't stay in that Maple Ridge house forever." Vanessa took a sip of wine. "I know." Warren noticed she didn't say we. Scott wiped steak juice from his beard. "What's your 5-year plan?" "Warren?" The question sounded casual. It wasn't. Warren folded his napkin once before answering. "I've been building something on the side." Scott grinned immediately. "Oh, here we go." Megan laughed before Warren even continued. Vanessa stared into her wine glass. Warren stayed calm. "It's a logistics platform," he said. "Supply chain optimization mostly." Scott blinked twice. Then he barked a laugh so loud it startled the dog asleep near the fireplace. "No offense," Scott said, "but didn't you say something like that 3 years ago?" Megan jumped in. "What was it called again? Freight matrix route sync?" Vanessa corrected. Her voice carried embarrassment. "Not support." Warren remembered that, quietly. Scott leaned back in his chair. "So what is this one another app?" "It's not an app, then what is it?" Warren looked at him evenly. "A company." Megan nearly choked on her wine, laughing. Vanessa covered her mouth, but she was laughing too. Actually laughing. The kind that came from deep in the chest. "Oh my God," she said. "Warren." "What?" he asked gently. "You drive deliveries during the day." "I know, and now you own a company working on one." Scott shook his head. "Buddy, there's no shame in regular jobs. I think people get obsessed with being entrepreneurs now." "That's true," Megan added. "Everybody watches 2 podcasts and suddenly they're Jeff Bezos." Vanessa smiled into her glass. Warren noticed everything: the angle of her mouth, the way she avoided eye contact while laughing, the relief she felt when other people made him smaller before she had to. His phone buzzed once inside his jacket pocket. He ignored it. Across the table, Vanessa's phone lit up. Trevor Callahan. The name flashed for less than a second before she turned the screen face down. Too fast, too practiced. Warren reached for his water. Scott kept talking. "You know what your problem is," Scott said. "You think too small and too big at the same time." "That doesn't make sense," Warren said. "It does. Guys like you always want the giant breakthrough instead of just climbing normally." Normally, corporate ladder, management, stability, benefits. Warren nodded slowly. "I see." Scott mistook silence for surrender. "That happened often. You know who's killing it right now," Scott continued. "People in executive consulting, marketing, finance, high-value sectors." He looked toward Vanessa. "She gets that. Vanessa's smart." Megan smiled proudly at her sister. Vanessa adjusted a strand of hair behind her ear. "We just signed a regional healthcare account last month," she said. 7 figures. Scott pointed his fork toward Warren. "See, that's real business." Warren nodded once. "Sounds impressive." Vanessa's phone buzzed again. This time Warren saw her thumb move under the table before she opened the message. A tiny smile appeared. Gone in a second. But Warren saw it. Years of warehouse management taught him something valuable. People revealed themselves in patterns, not speeches. Scott stood to refill drinks. "You know," he said loudly, "if Warren's startup takes off, maybe he'll finally upgrade from that truck." Megan laughed again. Vanessa did too. Warren smiled politely. Then he cut another piece of steak and ate slowly while the conversation rolled over him like distant traffic. No anger showed on his face. That was the part people misunderstood about quiet men. Silence was not surrender. Sometimes silence was measurement. The dinner dragged into dessert. Cheesecake from a bakery in Dublin. Coffee in thin porcelain cups Scott claimed came from Italy. By 9:30, Vanessa was scrolling through emails while pretending to listen. Warren watched rain collect against the dining room windows. "You okay?" Megan asked him suddenly. "I'm fine." "You've barely talked." Scott smirked. He's probably thinking about his billion-dollar logistics empire. More laughter. Warren looked at the table, then at Vanessa. She didn't defend him. Didn't even try. Instead, she said quietly, "Warren gets ideas sometimes. Ideas, not plans, not achievements. Ideas, like a child talking about becoming an astronaut." Something settled inside Warren at that moment. Not rage, something colder, clearer. Because for the first time he realized Vanessa no longer saw him as a man temporarily struggling. She saw him as permanent, permanent disappointment, permanent smallness, permanent background noise. And once people decided who you were, they stopped looking closely. That was the dangerous part. Outside, rain hammered harder against the driveway as Warren carried leftover containers to the truck. Vanessa stood under the garage light, texting quickly, while thinking he couldn't see the reflection on the passenger window. Trevor again. Warren loaded the containers carefully, closed the tailgate. Then he looked once toward the skyline of downtown Columbus, glowing faintly in the distance. Somewhere beyond those lights stood the headquarters of Northline Dynamics. $43 billion in freight movement contracts over the previous 18 months. 3 states expanding into 6. A logistics system powerful enough that half the companies using it didn't even realize whose software routed their shipments overnight. And his wife had laughed at him over steak and wine because of an old truck. Vanessa climbed into the passenger seat. "You're quiet," she said during the drive home. Warren kept his eyes on the wet highway. "Tired." "You shouldn't let Scott get to you." Warren almost smiled at that. The windshield wipers swept rhythmically across the glass. Back and forth, back and forth. Then Vanessa's phone lit the dark cabin again. Trevor Callahan. Warren saw her turn the brightness down immediately, but not before he noticed the message preview. "Can't stop thinking about tonight." Warren drove another mile in silence. Rainwater hissed beneath the tires. Downtown lights reflected across the windshield like fractured gold. And somewhere deep beneath the calm expression on his face, something had already begun moving into place. Warren Hughes lost his corporate job on a Tuesday morning in April. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. A woman from Human Resources slid a folder across the conference table while avoiding direct eye contact. The regional director kept using phrases like restructuring initiative and post-pandemic efficiency alignment. Warren remembered the exact number of fluorescent ceiling panels above them. 12. One flickering in the corner. Outside the glass walls of the conference room, people kept typing at their desks, while his career quietly ended behind closed doors. At 37 years old, Warren walked out of the Columbus office carrying a cardboard box containing one framed photo from his honeymoon in Charleston, a coffee mug from a logistics expo in Chicago, 2 notebooks full of routing calculations, and a navy jacket with his old company logo stitched on the chest. No one stopped him in the parking garage. Rain had just started falling when he loaded the box into his truck. He sat behind the steering wheel for nearly 15 minutes without starting the engine, not because he panicked, because he was calculating. Warren had always done that. While other people reacted emotionally, Warren reduced problems into systems, variables, weak points, pressure lines. That habit had made him one of the best logistics analysts in the Midwest before the layoffs. But companies rarely valued the men who understood how things worked beneath the surface. They valued presentation, confidence, noise. Trevor Callahan types, not Warren Hughes types. At first, Warren believed he would find another corporate position quickly. He had 12 years of experience, strong references, operational certifications. But 6 months passed, then 8. Every interview ended politely. We went with someone more aligned with leadership culture. Leadership culture. Warren learned what that phrase meant after the 3rd rejection. Not loud enough, not polished enough, not expensive looking enough. By the time winter arrived, Warren was driving regional delivery routes for a transportation subcontractor outside Columbus. 4 in the morning starts, steel-toe boots, warehouse coffee that tasted burned before sunrise. Vanessa tried supporting him in the beginning, at least outwardly. "You'll bounce back," she told him once while folding laundry. "You're smart, but support changes shape when months become years, especially when one spouse keeps climbing." Vanessa's salary at Halstead and Burke doubled within 3 years. New clients, corporate retreats, executive dinners downtown. Meanwhile, Warren smelled like diesel fuel when he came home. The distance between them widened slowly enough that neither talked about it directly. That was the strange thing about marriages collapsing. Most did not explode. They eroded, quietly, like riverbanks disappearing 1 inch at a time. But Warren never stopped building. That part Vanessa never understood. Every night after work, he sat at the old oak desk in the basement for 4 or 5 hours. The basement smelled faintly of concrete and machine oil because the previous owner used it as a workshop. A single desk lamp illuminated stacks of notebooks filled with warehouse maps, freight patterns, fuel calculations, and routing inefficiencies. Warren began noticing something during his delivery work. Large companies wasted unbelievable amounts of money because their logistics systems barely communicated with each other. Distribution centers overstocked products in one state while shortages hit another. Drivers crossed empty routes. Warehouses paid overtime because shipment forecasting lagged behind real-time conditions by hours, sometimes days. Warren saw the gaps because he worked inside them now, not from executive offices, from loading docks at 4:30 in the morning, from truck stops in Indiana, from frozen warehouse lots outside Cincinnati, where drivers smoked cigarettes beside idling freight trucks while dispatch systems crashed again. The executives creating these systems never touched the ground. Warren did. And eventually he started designing something better. At first it lived only inside spreadsheets, then crude software models, then predictive routing tools. He taught himself coding through online courses after midnight while Vanessa slept upstairs. Python, database architecture, freight optimization algorithms. Daniel Reed met him during that period. Daniel worked operations for a mid-sized shipping company in Cleveland and first contacted Warren after hearing about a routing tool Warren built for independent carriers. They met at a diner outside Akron. Nothing glamorous, sticky menus, bad coffee, snow packed against the windows. Daniel studied Warren's laptop for almost 40 minutes without speaking. Finally, he looked up. "Did you build this alone?" "Yes." Daniel leaned back slowly. You know this could scale nationally, right? Warren stirred his coffee once. I know. What's the company called? Warren looked out the window at the snow. Northline Dynamics. That was the first time he said the name out loud. 3 years later, Northline Dynamics occupied 28 floors of a glass tower on East Broad Street in downtown Columbus. But in the beginning, it operated from a rented warehouse office outside Cleveland, beside a tire distributor and a plumbing supplier. Warren and Daniel worked folding tables under buzzing fluorescent lights. The heat failed twice during winter. Their first server rack overheated constantly. One client paid them partly in restaurant gift cards because cash flow was tight, but the software worked. That was the difference. Northline reduced freight waste by measurable percentages within weeks. Fuel costs dropped. Delivery accuracy improved. Warehouses cut overtime. Then larger clients noticed. Warren stayed invisible intentionally. That part surprised Daniel. You should be front-facing, Daniel argued during one meeting. Investors trust founders they can see. I'm not looking for attention. You're building a billion-dollar infrastructure company. Warren shrugged slightly. The system matters more than the face. So Daniel became the public executive, interviews, press photos, industry conferences. Meanwhile, Warren structured ownership quietly through layered holding companies and private trusts. Olivia Mercer later helped refine legally. No flashy magazine profiles, no LinkedIn celebrity posts, no podcast appearances. He preferred it that way. And because Vanessa stopped asking detailed questions years earlier, she never noticed what was happening. She saw late nights, computer screens, occasional business travel. But Warren had conditioned her expectations already. In her mind, he remained the struggling husband trying side projects in the basement. People rarely investigate stories they already believe. One night, about 18 months earlier, Vanessa walked downstairs unexpectedly around 1:30 in the morning. Warren quickly minimized several financial dashboards across his monitors. Vanessa looked exhausted, silk robe, bare feet, mascara slightly smeared. You're still doing this? She asked. Warren nodded. Almost done. With what work? She glanced at the screens without interest. Then she smiled faintly. You know what your problem is? Warren looked up. You think too much. She kissed his forehead absently and walked back upstairs. Warren listened to her footsteps fade. Then he reopened the dashboards. At that exact moment, Northline Dynamics finalized a routing acquisition worth $42 million. Vanessa never knew. Months later, Warren purchased the Broad Street headquarters through one of the holding entities Olivia helped establish. The building contained executive conference floors, a live logistics command center, private security teams, 370 employees, and a top-floor office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Columbus. Warren visited that office only twice during the first year. He preferred warehouse floors, dispatch rooms, server operations, places where systems either worked or failed honestly, not performatively. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so sad. Every morning, Vanessa walked directly past the headquarters while carrying coffee from a cafe across the street. Sometimes she admired the architecture. Sometimes she mentioned the company casually at dinner. Northline keeps buying buildings downtown, she once said. Whoever runs that place must be insanely rich. Warren ate quietly. Probably. You can always tell successful companies by how they present themselves. Warren looked down at his delivery uniform. Oil stains marked one sleeve from a damaged pallet jack earlier that morning. I guess so, he said. Vanessa never noticed the expression that crossed his face afterward. Not bitterness. Something quieter. The realization that appearances had become more real to her than truth. And Warren understood something else, too. The less impressive he appeared, the more honest people became around him. They underestimated him faster, mocked him more openly, revealed themselves more clearly. That knowledge would matter soon. Because somewhere between the hidden messages, the late nights, and Trevor Callahan's name glowing repeatedly across Vanessa's phone screen, Warren Hughes had started preparing for something far bigger than business. Downtown Columbus looked different before 8 in the morning. Cleaner, sharper. Glass towers reflected pale winter sunlight while steam rose from street vents into the freezing air. Men in wool coats crossed intersections carrying coffee cups worth more than the lunches Warren packed for work. Vanessa loved mornings downtown. Not the cold, not the traffic. The feeling, the movement, the sense that important people were doing important things around her. She parked 3 blocks from Halstead and Burke because executive parking spaces inside the garage were reserved for senior leadership. Trevor Callahan had one. Vanessa did not. Yet. But she was close enough to imagine it. Every morning she followed nearly the same route. Coffee from Alder and Finch Cafe. Cross Broad Street. Past the Northline Dynamics headquarters. Enter Halstead and Burke by 8:10. Routine created blindness. That was something Warren understood deeply. People stopped noticing what became familiar, which explained how Vanessa could walk past the building her husband owned for almost 2 years without ever questioning it. The headquarters stood 28 stories high, wrapped in reflective black glass. Minimalist silver lettering displayed Northline Dynamics above the revolving entrance doors. Valets handled executive arrivals. Private security watched from inside. Delivery trucks moved through underground loading access beneath the tower like clockwork. The building radiated money without trying too hard. Vanessa admired that. One Thursday morning, she paused near the crosswalk with coffee warming her hands beneath leather gloves. A black Escalade pulled smoothly beneath the entrance canopy. 2 men in suits stepped out carrying tablets and hard cases while security opened the doors immediately. Vanessa stared up at the building. God, she murmured softly. A woman beside her glanced over. What? That company, Vanessa said. Whoever owns it must be worth hundreds of millions. The woman laughed lightly. Probably billions. Traffic lights changed. Vanessa continued toward her office without another thought. 300 feet away, Warren Hughes sat inside a dark gray Range Rover parked across the street. He watched her through the windshield. Not emotionally, carefully. The SUV remained anonymous among downtown traffic. Tinted windows, no custom plates, nothing flashy. Daniel Reed insisted Warren stop driving the Ford to certain meetings once Northline crossed major valuation thresholds. You can't negotiate 9-figure contracts looking like you're delivering drywall, Daniel had told him months earlier. Warren never cared much about appearances, but invisibility mattered now, and invisibility required control. He wore a charcoal overcoat over a dark suit that morning. A travel mug rested untouched in the cup holder while market reports glowed across the center console screen. Vanessa crossed Broad Street exactly as she always did. Dark wool coat, brown leather boots, hair pinned loosely against the wind, still beautiful. Warren acknowledged that honestly, painfully even. That was the complicated part. Disappointment did not automatically erase love. Sometimes it made the absence of it louder. Then Trevor Callahan appeared. Warren noticed him before Vanessa did. Tall, expensive navy coat, polished shoes that never touched warehouse floors. Trevor exited a silver Mercedes S-Class, parked illegally beside the curb. He smiled the moment he saw Vanessa. Not professionally, personally, familiar. Vanessa's expression shifted immediately. Small changes, shoulders relaxing, eyes brightening. The kind of look spouses noticed long before words confirmed anything. Trevor reached her near the crosswalk. He leaned close enough that Vanessa laughed at something he said. Then his hand settled briefly against the small of her back while guiding her across the street. Natural. Practiced. Not accidental. Warren watched the contact happen through the windshield without moving. Cold air hummed quietly through the SUV vents. Traffic lights reflected across the dashboard. Trevor kept his hand there half a second too long before removing it. Vanessa did not pull away. The two of them entered Halstead and Burke together. Warren sat silently for several moments after they disappeared inside. No dramatic reaction came. No gripping the steering wheel, no explosion. People misunderstood restraint because movies taught them emotion had to look loud. But Warren's mind operated differently. His brain cataloged details automatically. Time 8:07 a.m. Body language intimate familiarity. No visible surprise from either party. Repeated behavioral comfort. Pattern consistency likely established prior. He stored information the same way Northline systems processed freight variables. Quietly. Efficiently. Without panic. His phone buzzed. Daniel Reed. Warren answered immediately. "You coming upstairs?" Daniel asked. "In 10. We've got Nashville numbers ready. I'll review them. Daniel paused briefly. You sound tired. Long week. Warren ended the call and looked once more toward the Halstead and Burke building. Years earlier, Vanessa used to wait for him in parking lots after work. Back when Warren still wore pressed button-down shirts and company ID badges clipped to leather belts. She used to text him things like, "Miss you already. Drive safe. Can't wait till you get home." Now most of their conversations revolved around schedules, Bill's dry cleaning, and whether he remembered to buy detergent. Distance rarely announced itself dramatically. It accumulated, one neglected moment at a time. Warren started the SUV. The underground entrance to Northline Dynamics opened automatically after plate recognition scanned the vehicle. Security barriers lowered. Inside, the atmosphere changed immediately. Warm lighting, polished concrete, massive digital freight maps displaying live shipping routes across North America. Employees moved quickly through corridors carrying tablets and coffee. No one here knew Warren as a delivery supervisor. Here people stood straighter when he entered rooms. Not from fear, precision, because Warren Hughes noticed everything. An operations manager hurried toward him near the elevator bank. "Morning, Mr. Hughes." "Morning. We rerouted the Louisville freight issue overnight. Cost impact down 38%. Good." The manager nodded and continued moving. Warren stepped into a private elevator requiring biometric access. As the doors closed, his reflection appeared briefly in the polished steel walls. Dark suit, clean shave, Patek Philippe beneath his coat sleeve. No reflective vest. No rusted truck. Different worlds separated by less than 30 minutes. The elevator opened onto the executive floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Columbus beneath a pale gray sky. Daniel Reed stood inside the operations conference room, already reviewing projections on a wall-sized display. Daniel looked up. "There he is." Warren removed his coat. How bad, Daniel exhaled. "Chicago expansion's moving faster than projected. Good problem, technically." Warren studied the data silently. Shipment volume curves, infrastructure costs, hiring timelines. Northline Dynamics now handled logistics coordination for companies in healthcare, automotive manufacturing, retail distribution, and agricultural supply chains across multiple states. Quietly. No flashy advertisements. No celebrity CEO branding. Just systems that worked better than everyone else's. Daniel watched Warren reviewing numbers. Then he leaned back carefully. "You okay?" Warren kept reading. "Why you've been distracted lately?" Warren clicked another report open. Personal stuff. Daniel nodded slowly. He knew better than to pry. After several minutes, Warren stepped away from the display wall and looked out over downtown. From this height, people crossing Broad Street looked small, predictable, moving in patterns. Somewhere below, Vanessa sat inside Halstead, and Burke probably discussing campaign strategies and executive branding with Trevor Callahan. She still believed Warren spent mornings unloading freight crates outside regional warehouses. The thought should have angered him more than it did. Instead, it saddened him. Because Warren realized something uncomfortable. Vanessa no longer saw reality. She saw presentation. And once a person begins loving appearances more than truth, they stop recognizing value unless it arrives wearing expensive shoes. Daniel interrupted the silence. By the way, he said Halstead and Burke officially submitted interest for the Northline account. Warren turned slightly. "When?" "This morning." Daniel handed over a folder. Trevor Callahan's leading the pitch. Warren stared at the company logo printed across the proposal packet. Halstead and Burke, Creative Strategies. Then his eyes moved lower. Lead Account Director Vanessa Hughes. For the first time in weeks, something close to irony touched Warren's expression. Not amusement, something sharper. Because his wife was now preparing a marketing campaign designed to impress the company she unknowingly slept beside every night. And Warren suddenly understood exactly how dangerous underestimation could become. The first hotel charge appeared on a Thursday, $312.84. Le Méridien, Columbus downtown. Warren noticed it at 5:12 a.m. while sitting inside his truck outside a distribution center near Groveport. The warehouse lot smelled like wet asphalt and diesel fuel. Forklifts beeped somewhere behind rows of loading bays while freezing rain tapped softly against the windshield. Warren stared at the transaction on the banking app for several seconds. Then he checked the date. Previous Friday. Vanessa had told him she stayed late at the office preparing a client presentation. Warren did not react immediately. He enlarged the charge details. Valet parking included. Room service included. 2 guests. He locked the phone screen and stepped out into the cold. Warehouse workers moved pallets beneath harsh fluorescent lights, while radio chatter echoed through the dock corridors. Warren signed freight manifests, checked inventory tags, and corrected a routing error from Cincinnati without mentioning the hotel charge once. That was the difference between Warren and most people. Emotion never arrived before structure. By noon, he already had a process. Verify pattern, collect evidence, avoid assumptions, stay controlled. 3 more charges appeared over the next 2 weeks. A wine bar in German Village, 2 late-night ride shares downtown, another hotel. Smaller this time. Warren noticed all of them because Vanessa stopped being careful once she believed he had stopped paying attention. People became reckless around quiet men. They confused silence with blindness. One Wednesday night, Vanessa entered the kitchen around 9:40, carrying her laptop bag and heels in one hand. "You're still awake?" she asked. Warren sat at the counter reviewing shipping reports on his tablet. Couldn't sleep. She poured herself sparkling water without looking at him directly. "Trevor kept us late again. North Line account." Warren looked up calmly. "How's that going?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Massive project. Honestly, if we land this client, half the agency gets promoted." "Sounds important." "It is important." Warren studied her quietly. There was a faint scent beneath her perfume. Men's cologne. Woodsy. Expensive. Not his. Vanessa opened the refrigerator. "You should think about getting into corporate consulting," she said casually. "You understand logistics enough." Warren almost smiled at the irony. "Maybe. I'm serious. You'd probably make decent money." "Decent money?" Warren nodded once. Then Vanessa's phone buzzed across the counter. Trevor Callahan. The name illuminated brightly against the dark kitchen. Vanessa grabbed it too quickly. "He never stops working," she muttered. But Warren noticed something else. The expression on her face before she hit it, not annoyance, anticipation. That night, Warren lay awake listening to rain strike the bedroom windows, while Vanessa slept beside him facing the opposite direction. At 2:13 a.m., he quietly got out of bed. Downstairs, the kitchen remained dark except for under-cabinet lights glowing softly across marble countertops Vanessa insisted on remodeling 2 years earlier. Warren poured black coffee and opened his laptop. Then he searched for Olivia Mercer. Mercer and Kane Family Law, downtown Columbus. Specialized in high-asset divorce litigation and corporate asset protection. Warren stared at the website for nearly a minute before scheduling a consultation. Friday, 8 a.m. Private conference requested. The meeting took place inside a narrow brick building 3 blocks from the Franklin County Courthouse. Olivia Mercer looked exactly like the kind of attorney wealthy people hired before problems became public. Early 40s. Precise posture. Dark gray suit. Minimal jewelry. The office itself felt intentionally calm. Walnut shelves. Neutral artwork. No clutter. Warren appreciated environments designed around efficiency. Olivia reviewed the intake document silently. Then she folded her hands. "You own Northline Dynamics entirely through Hughes Strategic Holdings." "Yes." "And your wife has no operational involvement?" "None." Olivia nodded slightly. "When did you establish the holding structure 3 years ago? Before substantial valuation growth?" "Yes." That answer changed something subtly in the room. Not emotion. Trajectory. Olivia leaned back carefully. "Mr. Hughes, before we discuss anything else, I need to ask directly. Are you here because you believe your wife is having an affair?" Warren took a moment before answering. "I believe something inappropriate is happening. Do you have proof? Not yet? Do not confront her." Warren met her eyes evenly. "I wasn't planning to." "That's good." Olivia opened a legal pad. "Most people destroy leverage because they want emotional release faster than resolution." Warren remained silent. Olivia continued. "If infidelity exists, we verify it legally. Quietly. Financially, your situation is strong because of timing and structure, but strong cases collapse when clients get angry and impulsive. I understand. She studied him for several seconds. You're unusually calm. No, Warren said softly. I'm prepared. For the first time, Olivia showed the faintest trace of respect. Over the next hour, they built a framework, document timelines, separate accounts gradually, preserve records, protect ownership layers, avoid confrontation, everything legal, everything controlled. Before Warren left, Olivia handed him a thin folder. One more thing, she said. Warren paused near the office door. People assume courts reward emotion, Olivia said. They don't. Systems reward documentation. That sentence stayed with him long after he returned downtown. Outside Broad Street buzzed with lunch hour traffic, while executives crossed intersections carrying salads and conference folders beneath steel gray skies. Warren sat inside the Range Rover parked beneath the North Line garage entrance and reviewed the next steps mentally. Not revenge, preparation. That distinction mattered, because despite everything, part of him still hoped he was wrong. That part disappeared 3 nights later. Vanessa claimed she was attending a late strategy dinner with Trevor and 2 healthcare executives from Chicago. Warren nodded normally. What time will you be home? Probably late. He watched her leave wearing the black dress she usually reserved for corporate events. At 10:47 p.m., Warren parked half a block from Bellamy's Wine and Oyster Bar in the Short North District. Cold wind swept between buildings while couples laughed beneath patio heaters glowing orange against the dark. Warren remained inside the SUV, engine off, lights off. At 11:06, Trevor Callahan emerged from the restaurant beside Vanessa. No clients, no healthcare executives, just the 2 of them. Trevor rested his hand against Vanessa's waist while they waited for valet service. Then he kissed her, not quickly, not uncertainly, comfortably, like repetition already existed. Warren watched through the windshield without moving. The city noise outside seemed distant suddenly, muted. Trevor said something that made Vanessa laugh softly before opening the passenger door for her. The Mercedes pulled away. Warren remained parked another 5 minutes. His breathing stayed steady, hands relaxed, no shattered steering wheel moment, no screaming, only clarity, because certainty removed confusion, and confusion had been the heaviest part. When Warren finally drove home, Columbus streets reflected rainwater and neon across the asphalt in fractured colors. Downtown towers glowed against the clouds, including Northline Dynamics, his building, his company, his life's work. At home, the Maple Ridge house felt unusually large without Vanessa inside it. Warren loosened his tie and walked quietly into the basement office. Server dashboards illuminated the room in cool blue light. Routing systems processed millions of dollars in freight movement in real time across 6 states. Order, precision, predictability. Things either functioned or failed. Human relationships were messier. Warren sat heavily in the desk chair and opened a secure folder Olivia instructed him to create. Then he entered the first confirmed incident. Date. Location. Time. Observed conduct. No emotional language. Only facts. When he finished typing, Warren stared at the screen for several moments. Then he closed the laptop slowly. Upstairs, the house remained silent except for the ticking kitchen clock. After nearly 20 years together, Warren Hughes finally understood something painful. Vanessa had not fallen in love with another man overnight. She had slowly stopped respecting the man already beside her. And once respect disappeared, betrayal became logistics. Scheduling, excuses, deleted messages, late meetings. Warren leaned back in the chair and looked toward the basement ceiling where faint footsteps would eventually return sometime after midnight. His expression remained calm, but somewhere underneath that calm, systems were already moving into place. Legal systems, financial systems, corporate systems, the kind that did not care who laughed loudest at dinner tables, only who prepared first. Warren Hughes made the anniversary reservation 12 days in advance. Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. The Guild House in downtown Columbus. Corner table. Quiet side of the restaurant away from the bar traffic. The hostess confirmed everything personally because Northline Dynamics executives regularly entertained clients there even if most staff members didn't recognize Warren himself. That anonymity still worked in his favor. Warren spent unusual time preparing for the evening, not extravagantly, carefully. He picked up his suit from a tailor near German Village after work. Dark charcoal. Clean lines. Nothing flashy. He stopped at Kleinhent's Jewelers afterward and purchased the watch Vanessa once pointed at through a display case nearly 8 years earlier. A vintage Cartier tank. Elegant. Understated. Back then she laughed and said, "Maybe someday." Warren remembered small things like that. Always had. The watch came in a cream-colored box tied with dark ribbon. Warren placed it carefully inside the truck before driving home through freezing rain. The Maple Ridge house sat quiet beneath pale porch lights when he arrived. Inside, Vanessa stood at the kitchen island, typing rapidly on her laptop, while half-finished Pinot Noir rested beside her. "You're home late," she said without looking up. "Traffic." Warren loosened his coat slowly. "I made reservations for Thursday." That got her attention. She glanced up briefly. "For what?" "Our anniversary." Vanessa blinked once as though she genuinely forgot the date was close. "Oh, the Guild House. That's nice." Warren placed the Cartier box carefully inside a kitchen drawer before she noticed. "We haven't gone out in a while," he said. "Yeah." She returned immediately to her laptop. The conversation should have bothered him more. Years earlier, Vanessa would have planned outfits weeks ahead for anniversaries. Now she responded like someone confirming a dentist appointment. Still, Warren continued normally, because structure mattered more than disappointment now. Thursday arrived cold and gray across Columbus. Warren spent the morning reviewing Nashville expansion reports inside Northline headquarters before changing into the tailored charcoal suit around late afternoon. Daniel Reed noticed immediately. "Well," Daniel said, leaning against the office doorway. "Look at you. Anniversary dinner." Daniel smiled faintly. "Big plans?" Warren adjusted his cufflinks. "Just dinner." Daniel hesitated. Then carefully, "How are things at home?" Warren looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Broad Street. "Complicated." Daniel nodded once. He understood enough not to push further. At 6:40 p.m., Warren arrived home carrying the Cartier box beneath his coat. Vanessa stood upstairs in the bedroom wearing a black silk blouse while applying makeup in the mirror. For a brief moment, Warren remembered exactly why he married her. She still carried herself beautifully, still moved through rooms with effortless confidence, still knew how to command attention without raising her voice. But beauty became strange once trust cracked beneath it, like seeing expensive glass already fractured under sunlight. "You look nice," Warren said quietly. Vanessa checked her phone again before answering. "Thanks." Warren placed the watch box beside her makeup tray. "What's that? Open it later." A small smile touched her face. Real this time. Tiny, but real. Then her phone vibrated again. The smile disappeared immediately. Vanessa stared at the screen longer than necessary. Warren noticed her breathing shift slightly. "What is it?" he asked. She turned too quickly. "Nothing." Silence stretched between them. Then Vanessa exhaled sharply. "Oh, God." Warren already knew. "I completely forgot," she said. Trevor moved the Northline prep meeting to tonight. Warren stood motionless beside the dresser. "What time?" 7. "Our reservation's at 7:30. "I know." Vanessa rubbed her forehead dramatically. "I'm sorry. Okay. This account is massive right now." Warren watched her carefully. "Can it wait one night?" "You don't understand how agencies work." The sentence came out sharper than she intended. Warren absorbed it without reacting. Vanessa softened her tone slightly. "This could change everything for me professionally." Professionally. Warren looked toward the Cartier box, still unopened beside the mirror lights. "How late? I don't know." He nodded once. "Okay." Vanessa blinked. "That's it. What else would you like me to say?" Something about the calmness unsettled her briefly. Warren could see it. People expected noise after guilt. Not restraint. "I said I'm sorry. I heard you." Vanessa grabbed her coat and laptop bag quickly. "I'll make it up to you this weekend." Warren stepped aside so she could pass. As she moved toward the hallway, he caught the familiar scent again beneath her perfume. Trevor's cologne. Sandalwood. Amber. Expensive enough to linger. The front door closed. Then silence settled heavily through the house. Warren stood alone in the bedroom for several moments. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The Cartier box remained unopened under vanity lights. Finally, Warren picked it up and carried it downstairs. At 7:12 p.m., he sat alone inside his Range Rover parked across from the Guild House. Warm restaurant light spilled across wet sidewalks while couples entered laughing beneath umbrellas. The hostess called twice. Warren let both calls go unanswered. By 8:03, he started the engine. Not toward home. Downtown. The Le Méridien rooftop bar overlooked much of Columbus through enormous glass walls glowing gold against the rain-dark skyline. Warren parked half a block away beneath a flickering street lamp. Snow mixed lightly with rain now, cold enough to sting exposed skin. The rooftop lounge sat crowded with executives, finance groups, and young professionals pretending not to check stock portfolios between cocktails. Warren entered wearing the charcoal suit. No one looked twice at him. That was the strange advantage of wealth done correctly. Real power rarely dressed loudly. The hostess approached. "Good evening, sir. Table for one." "Of course." Warren selected a quiet seat near the back corner overlooking both the skyline and the main lounge area. Then he ordered bourbon he barely touched. At 8:27 p.m., Trevor Callahan entered beside Vanessa. They weren't discussing marketing strategy. That became obvious immediately. Trevor wore no tie. Vanessa laughed before he even finished speaking. Not corporate laughter, personal laughter. Relaxed, intimate. Trevor's hand settled naturally against her lower back as they crossed the room toward a private booth. The hostess greeted them by name. That detail mattered, meaning this was not their first visit. Warren watched through reflections in the glass rather than directly. Years managing logistics taught him how to observe without attracting attention. Trevor ordered expensive whiskey. Vanessa leaned close while he spoke. At one point, she touched his wrist while laughing softly at something Warren could not hear. There it was again, comfort, repetition, pattern, not accident. Warren felt something unexpected then, not jealousy, grief, because watching betrayal happen in real time removed all remaining illusion from memory. Every canceled dinner, every late meeting, every distracted conversation, every cold silence in bed. Suddenly all of it aligned cleanly. Trevor leaned across the booth around 9:14 p.m. and kissed Vanessa slowly. No hesitation, no fear of discovery. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass behind them while rain streaked across the skyline. Warren looked away briefly toward downtown traffic moving far below. Then he checked the time, documented mentally. Exact, precise. When he looked back again, Vanessa rested against Trevor's shoulder while scrolling through something on her phone. Warren recognized the screen immediately, pictures from their anniversary years earlier in Charleston. Trevor smiled while looking at them. That part hit differently, not explosive, sharp, like pressure slowly entering a fracture line. Warren finished the bourbon finally. Then he stood quietly and adjusted his coat. As he passed the hostess stand, she smiled politely. "Have a good night, sir?" Warren nodded once. Outside, cold rain soaked the sidewalks while city traffic reflected red and white across the pavement. He stopped beneath the awning for a moment and looked up toward the glowing rooftop windows above. Two people laughed somewhere overhead. Warren slipped his hands into his coat pockets and walked calmly toward the parking garage. Inside the Range Rover, he placed the unopened Cartier box on the passenger seat beside him. For several seconds, he simply stared at it. Then his phone buzzed. "Vanessa." Warren answered immediately. Hey, she said softly over restaurant noise. "We're still in meetings. Don't wait up." Warren looked through the rain-covered windshield toward the hotel. "I won't." She paused briefly. "You okay?" Warren started the engine. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm fine." Then he ended the call while windshield wipers swept steadily across the glass. Back and forth, like a system resetting itself before impact. The proposal package arrived at Northline Dynamics on a Monday morning. Not by mail, not through some generic sales inbox. It came through Daniel Reed's executive account with a polished subject line and 6 attachments. Halstead and Burke Creative Strategies. Northline Dynamics brand expansion proposal. Daniel forwarded it to Warren at 6:42 a.m. Warren opened it from his basement office before sunrise. The Maple Ridge house was still dark. Upstairs, Vanessa slept behind a closed bedroom door. She had come home at 12:18 the night before, carrying the sweet, sharp smell of rooftop cocktails and Trevor's cologne beneath her perfume. Warren had not asked where she had been. She had not offered details. That was how far they had drifted. Now her name sat on page 2 of the proposal deck in clean black type. Lead Account Director Vanessa Hughes. Beneath it, another name. Executive Sponsor Trevor Callahan. Warren stared at both names for several seconds. Then he scrolled. The deck was beautiful. Halstead and Burke knew how to package confidence. Sharp photography of highways at dusk, drone shots of warehouse districts, clean fonts, expensive language about momentum innovation, trust scale, and human-centered infrastructure. It said almost nothing concrete for the first 16 pages. Warren noticed that immediately. Men like Trevor often confused presentation with substance. They built rooms to impress people before anyone started asking questions. Warren reached page 17. There, the numbers began. Projected brand lift, regional awareness estimates, media placement costs, influencer logistics partnerships, executive positioning strategy. Warren leaned closer to the screen. Something tightened in his eyes. Inflated vendor pricing, duplicated production fees, a campaign measurement model that counted impressions twice. He opened a second monitor and began comparing their quoted market costs against Northline's internal procurement benchmarks. By 7:11 a.m., Warren had marked 14 questionable items. By 7:32:21, he exported the annotations into a private file. No emotion, just red boxes and comments. At 7:45, Vanessa came downstairs wearing workout clothes, her hair tied back, phone already in hand. She paused when she saw him at the kitchen table with coffee. "You're up early, so are you." "I have a big week." Warren closed the laptop just enough that the screen dimmed. The Northline pitch. Vanessa looked surprised for half a second. Then she shrugged. "I told you about that." "You mentioned it." She opened the refrigerator. "It's huge. Trevor says if we land it, there's a serious chance I get promoted to senior director. That would be good." "It would be more than good, Warren." She turned toward him with a bottle of cold brew in one hand. "It would prove I can handle national accounts." Warren watched her face as she said it. There was hunger there, not simple ambition, something sharper. A need to be seen by people she considered important. "Do you know much about Northline?" he asked. Vanessa gave a short laugh. "Enough. What do you think of them? They're private, quiet, very Midwest, which is exactly why they need us. Quiet can work. Quiet doesn't scale brands." Warren took a sip of coffee. Vanessa moved toward the hallway. Then she stopped. "And please don't make jokes about this being connected to your logistics idea." "I wasn't going to. I just mean, this is real business." The sentence sat in the kitchen between them. Warren placed the mug down carefully. "I understand." Vanessa did not notice the edge beneath those 2 words. She rarely noticed edges unless they were pointed at her directly. At Northline headquarters, the executive review began at 10 o'clock. Daniel stood beside the conference display while Warren sat at the head of the table with printed copies of the Halstead proposal. 3 senior staff members attended. Maya Ellis from procurement, Frank Coleman from legal, Renee Porter from communications. Everyone understood the rule with Warren. "Come prepared. Speak plainly. Do not hide bad numbers behind pretty slides." Daniel clicked to page 17. So he said Halstead wants $18.6 million for the first-year rollout. Maya let out a breath through her nose. "That's ambitious," overpriced Warren asked. "Some parts, yes. Others are ridiculous." Frank adjusted his glasses. "There are also potential compliance issues. Several recommended vendors have undisclosed ownership ties to firms used by Halstead executives in past campaigns." Daniel looked at Warren. "Trevor Callahan." Frank nodded. "Possibly. We're still checking." Warren's expression did not change. Check quietly. Frank made a note. Renee leaned forward. The creative direction is strong visually, but it misunderstands what Northline actually does. It treats us like a delivery brand. We are infrastructure. Warren looked at the slide showing a smiling truck driver beneath a sunset. He almost smiled. Almost. They see the truck, he said, not the system. The room went silent for a beat. Daniel knew Warren well enough to hear more in that sentence. Maya turned another page. There's another issue. The deck references access to internal growth projections that weren't in the RFP packet. Warren's eyes moved up. What projections? Maya pointed to a table on page 24. Chicago, Nashville, and Louisville volume estimates. Daniel frowned. That was confidential. Warren reached for the printed copy. The figures were close, not exact, but close enough to matter. Someone at Halstead had obtained information they should not have had, or someone at Northline had leaked it. Warren read the paragraph twice. Then he looked at Daniel. Find the source. Daniel nodded. Already on it. Warren closed the packet. Keep Halstead in the process. Renee blinked. You still want them at final pitch? Yes. Maya frowned slightly, even with these concerns. Especially with these concerns. Daniel studied him. What are you thinking? Warren stood and looked out toward Broad Street, where traffic moved below like thin veins of metal. I want to hear them explain it in person. No one argued. That afternoon at Halstead and Burke, the Northline War Room ran on coffee stress and Trevor Callahan's voice. Vanessa stood near a glass wall reviewing slides with two junior strategists while Trevor paced behind her. No, Trevor said sharply. That headline sounds small. Northline is not a trucking company. It's a movement. One junior strategist nodded too quickly. Right. A movement. Trevor pointed at the screen. And I want the founder section removed. Vanessa turned. There's almost nothing public on the founder. Exactly. Don't highlight what we don't know. We can frame Daniel Reed as the operational face. Good. Trevor stepped closer to her. See, that's why I need you on this. Vanessa smiled faintly. Warren would have recognized the smile immediately. Trevor lowered his voice, though not enough. Unlike some people, you actually understand ambition. A few employees pretended not to hear. Vanessa looked down at the slide deck. She did not defend Warren because Warren was not named. He did not have to be. Later, during a closed prep meeting, Trevor leaned against the conference table while reviewing client psychology. These Northline people are probably practical blue-collar types who got lucky with software, he said. They'll respond to confidence. Vanessa laughed lightly. You think I know. Guys like that want to feel elevated. They build something useful, then panic when the world starts watching. One manager asked, Do we know who owns the company? Trevor waved the question away. Some logistics guy. Private equity probably controls the real decisions now. Vanessa looked at the Northline logo on the screen. Whoever he is, he needs help looking like he belongs at the table. The room chuckled. Trevor smirked. That's our job. By evening, Vanessa sent the revised deck from her office. She added a final note beneath the email. Looking forward to showing Northline what a true national presence can look like. Warren read that line from his office on the 28th floor. The city beyond the glass had gone dark. Lights from downtown Columbus glittered below. Across Broad Street, Halstead and Burke still glowed on several floors. Warren could see silhouettes moving behind conference room glass. One of them might have been Vanessa. He sat alone with her proposal open on the large screen. Every slide contained polish, confidence, assumption, and beneath it weakness, unverified claims, inflated numbers, a misunderstanding of what Northline truly was, a misunderstanding of Warren himself. Daniel entered quietly and placed a file on the table. We traced the leaked projections. Warren turned. Daniel's face was tense. They came from a vendor consultant we terminated last quarter. He's now subcontracting for Halstead through a shell firm. Trevor. His name is on the approval chain. Warren opened the file. Invoices, email trails, vendor names. Enough to raise questions. Not enough yet to burn anyone down publicly. But enough. Warren closed the folder. When is the final pitch Friday? 10 a.m. Move it to the executive boardroom. Daniel paused. The 28th floor? Yes. You want to attend? Warren looked across the street at the glowing office tower where Vanessa had spent months believing she was above him. Yes. Daniel waited. Warren picked up the proposal deck and tapped it once against the table until the pages aligned perfectly. Let them present. His voice stayed calm. But this time they present to the man they laughed at. Friday morning arrived sharp and cold over downtown Columbus. The kind of cold that turned breath visible the second people stepped outside office towers. Broad Street pulsed with black sedans, ride shares, delivery vans, and executives carrying coffee cups beneath heavy coats. At 8:15 a.m., Vanessa Hughes stood inside Halstead and Burke's executive conference room, adjusting the sleeve of her cream blazer while junior staff finalized presentation files. Trevor Callahan paced near the screen wall like a man already rehearsing victory. This is the one, he said. Northline goes national within 5 years. If we lock them now, we become their permanent agency. Vanessa nodded while reviewing her notes. Truthfully, she felt nervous, not because of the pitch itself, because Northline dynamics intimidated her. There was something unusual about the company. Too private, too controlled. No flashy CEO interviews, no social media branding campaigns, no founder profiles. A company that large should have been louder. Trevor noticed her distraction. Relax, he said smoothly. These logistics guys aren't sophisticated marketers. We walk them through vision, positioning, prestige, and they'll fold. Vanessa gave a small smile. I know. Trevor stepped closer and lowered his voice. And after today, your promotion conversation changes. That landed exactly where he intended. Vanessa had spent years climbing toward rooms like this. Senior leadership, national accounts, people who mattered. People who never drove rusted trucks to family dinners. At 9:20 a.m., their team crossed Broad Street toward Northline headquarters, carrying laptops, pitch binders, and garment bags. The building rose above them in reflective black glass. Cold sunlight bounced sharply across the steel lettering above the entrance. Northline Dynamics. A private security officer opened the doors before they reached them. Inside, Vanessa slowed slightly. She had walked past the lobby dozens of times. She had never entered. The interior felt less like a corporate office and more like infrastructure command. Massive digital walls displayed live freight movement across North America. Colored routes pulsed between distribution hubs in real time. Operations staff moved quickly through the lobby, wearing discreet earpieces and carrying tablets. No wasted motion, no decorative nonsense. Everything inside the building looked built for function first. Trevor adjusted his tie confidently. Good, he murmured. They're trying to look bigger than they are. Vanessa wasn't sure that was true. A woman from executive relations greeted them. Good morning. Halstead and Burke. Trevor smiled immediately. Trevor Callahan. Of course. Right this way. They followed her toward a private elevator requiring keycard access. Vanessa noticed something then. Employees inside the building spoke differently than people at Halstead. Short sentences. Precise communication. No performative energy. Even the silence felt organized. The elevator rose smoothly. 28th floor. When the doors opened, the atmosphere changed again. Dark walnut paneling, muted lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Columbus beneath pale winter skies. A long glass wall revealed a live operations center beyond the executive corridor, where analysts monitored shipping grids across multiple states. Trevor let out a low whistle. Okay, he admitted softly. This is serious money. Vanessa adjusted her blazer again. Something uneasy moved through her chest. The executive boardroom doors remained closed while an assistant prepared coffee service nearby. Trevor leaned closer. Remember, he said quietly, confidence. We're not here to impress them. We're here to show them what they need. Vanessa nodded, but she kept staring toward the frosted glass doors. At exactly 9:58 they opened. Daniel Reed stepped out first. Vanessa recognized him immediately from trade publications. Tall, controlled, calm, Mr. Callahan, Daniel said. Trevor extended his hand confidently. Daniel. Great to finally meet in person. Daniel shook at once. Ms. Hughes. Vanessa smiled politely. Thank you for having us. Daniel stepped aside. Please. The executive team is waiting. Trevor entered first. Vanessa followed, then she stopped walking. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Warren Hughes stood at the far end of the boardroom beside the windows overlooking Broad Street. Navy bespoke suit, white shirt, dark tie, silver watch beneath one cuff. No reflective vest, no warehouse dust, no delivery truck keys clipped to worn denim. He looked completely different and exactly the same at once. The stillness in the room hit Vanessa physically before her mind caught up. For one impossible second, her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. Warren looked toward them calmly. No anger, no dramatic satisfaction, just stillness. Daniel moved beside him. "Trevor, Vanessa," Daniel said evenly. "I'd like to introduce the founder and majority owner of Northline Dynamics." A pause. Then Warren Hughes. Silence swallowed the room whole. Vanessa felt her stomach drop so fast she nearly lost balance. Trevor blinked once, twice. He looked at Warren again, as though expecting a punchline. None came. The junior strategists behind Vanessa exchanged confused glances. One of them whispered, "Wait." "What?" Warren stepped forward slowly. The polished conference table reflected the skyline light across his suit. He extended his hand toward Trevor first. Professional. Controlled. Trevor shook it automatically, but his confidence had already cracked. "You're, Trevor began. "Yes," Warren said calmly. That single word landed harder than shouting ever could. Vanessa still hadn't moved. Her mind flashed backward violently through years of details now rearranging themselves, the late-night work, the hidden phone calls, the quiet business trips, the strange calm whenever money came up. The fact Warren never panicked financially even after losing his corporate job, the Broad Street building, the company. The entire time. Her husband. Trevor forced a laugh too quickly. "Well, he said that's one hell of an introduction." Warren looked at him evenly. "I prefer keeping attention on the systems." Nobody spoke after that. The silence stretched long enough to become painful. Finally, Daniel gestured toward the table. "Please, let's begin." Everyone sat. Vanessa's hands felt cold despite the heated room. Across from her, Warren opened the proposal binder slowly. Not once did he look embarrassed. Not once did he look defensive. That unsettled her more than anger would have, because suddenly every family dinner replayed differently in her mind. Every joke, every laugh, every time she let Megan and Scott reduce him into something small. And Warren had simply sat there already owning more than any of them could imagine. Trevor recovered first. Men like Trevor always did. Confidence was reflex for them. "Well," Trevor said smoothly, "now that we know who we're speaking to, let me say Northline is even more impressive than we realized." Warren nodded slightly. "Go ahead." Trevor launched into the presentation. Strong opening, market positioning, brand expansion, national visibility strategy. Vanessa normally admired Trevor during pitches. Today she noticed something else. Performance. Everything sounded polished but hollow under pressure. And Warren sat perfectly still while listening, occasionally making notes, occasionally turning pages, never interrupting. The longer Trevor spoke, the worse the imbalance became, because the room belonged entirely to Warren without him demanding it. At one point, Trevor referenced Northline's rapid but unstable expansion phase. Warren looked up calmly. "Unstable?" Trevor hesitated. While fast-growth companies often struggle maintaining operational identity, Warren folded his hands. "Our logistics accuracy rate last quarter was 99.4%. Trevor blinked. Daniel added quietly, "Highest in the sector." Trevor recovered quickly. "Right, which is why scaling brand perception matters now." Vanessa finally spoke. She walked through campaign visuals, market segmentation, executive positioning strategies. But halfway through explaining Northline's working-class brand image, her voice faltered slightly. Because Warren was watching her. Not angrily, not emotionally, simply listening. And somehow that felt worse. She suddenly remembered telling him, "This is real business." Her throat tightened. Trevor continued pushing forward aggressively, trying to regain control through confidence and speed. But Warren noticed everything. Every inflated number, every assumption, every place presentation covered weakness. By the time the final slide appeared, tension had thickened across the room. Trevor smiled. Questions. Warren closed the proposal folder carefully. Then he looked directly at Trevor for the first time since the meeting began. Yes, he said quietly. I have several. The silence after Warren Hughes said those 4 words lasted longer than it should have. I have several. Not loud, not emotional. But the atmosphere inside the executive boardroom shifted immediately. Trevor Callahan straightened slightly in his chair. Vanessa sat frozen beside him, one hand still resting near the laptop trackpad, as if her body had forgotten the presentation was over. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown Columbus moved normally beneath pale winter sunlight. Inside the room, nothing felt normal anymore. Warren opened the proposal binder again. He turned pages slowly. Measured, like a man reviewing engineering flaws instead of confronting betrayal. That was a polished presentation, Warren said calmly. Trevor recovered enough to smile. Thank you? Warren nodded once. Let's start with page 17. Trevor's smile weakened almost invisibly. Warren continued. You quoted Northline Dynamics $18.6 million for Phase 1 regional branding. That's correct? Warren looked toward Maya Ellis from procurement. Maya immediately activated a screen beside the conference display. Charts appeared. Vendor comparisons. Regional market rates. Campaign averages. Several numbers glowed red. Warren folded his hands. Our internal review found your projected production costs exceed market benchmarks by 43%. Trevor answered quickly. Premium campaigns require premium execution. Do they require duplicate billing categories? Trevor blinked. Warren tapped the binder lightly. Video distribution appears under both regional media deployment and strategic amplification services. Vanessa's stomach tightened instantly. She remembered flagging that internally. Trevor dismissed it at the time. Standard structuring, he called it. Trevor leaned forward. Those are separate operational functions. No, Warren said quietly. They aren't. The room went still again, not because Warren raised his voice, because he didn't. Men confident in systems rarely needed volume. Trevor forced another professional smile. With respect, Warren large-scale branding campaigns are more nuanced than logistics management. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. Wrong move. She knew it immediately. Daniel Reed leaned back slowly in his chair while several Northline executives exchanged glances. Warren remained perfectly calm. I built a predictive freight infrastructure system, handling multi-state distribution at a 99.4% accuracy rate, he said. I assure you I understand layered operational costs. Trevor's jaw tightened slightly. Vanessa noticed for the first time that Trevor hated being challenged publicly, especially by someone he previously considered beneath him. Warren turned another page. Now page 24. The screen shifted again. Northline expansion projections filled the display wall. Chicago, Nashville, Louisville, projected volume increases. Warehouse growth ratios. Vanessa felt cold, because those figures should not have been in the proposal. Trevor spoke carefully this time. We performed independent market forecasting. Warren looked directly at him. Interesting. Another pause. Then Warren pressed a button on the conference table. A second document appeared beside Halstead's projections. Internal Northline numbers. The similarities were obvious instantly. Not exact, but dangerously close. Trevor's confidence flickered for the first time. Warren spoke softly. These figures were confidential. Trevor adjusted his tie. Industry modeling often produces overlap. Not like this. Frank Coleman from Legal finally spoke. We traced data exposure to a subcontracted analytics vendor tied to Halstead Creative through a shell consulting arrangement. Trevor turned sharply. I have no idea what he's talking about. Frank slid a printed file across the table. Invoices say otherwise. Trevor opened the folder. Vanessa watched color drain subtly from his face. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough for Warren to notice. Enough for everyone to notice. The room felt colder now. Trevor closed the folder carefully. This is being misrepresented. Warren studied him quietly. Then, explain it. Trevor's voice sharpened slightly. You're making assumptions from incomplete procurement relationships. Warren leaned back. No. I'm asking why your campaign proposal contains operational forecasts connected to unauthorized vendor access. The difference mattered. Assumptions created arguments. Facts created pressure. Trevor looked toward Vanessa briefly, almost instinctively searching for support. Vanessa looked away. Because suddenly she understood something terrifying. Trevor did not control this room anymore. Warren did. And he had controlled it from the moment they walked inside. Trevor shifted tactics immediately. Another thing Vanessa noticed now. When confidence failed, Trevor became aggressive. "Look," Trevor said with all due respect, "I think this conversation's getting unnecessarily hostile." Warren almost smiled. Hostile. Interesting word, not betrayal, not inflated billing, not possible corporate misconduct. Questions were hostile. Warren rested one arm lightly against the table. "I haven't raised my voice once." Trevor said nothing. Warren continued calmly. "You presented yourselves as experts capable of elevating Northline dynamics nationally, but your proposal misunderstands our operational model, inflates costs, and contains compromised forecasting data." The silence afterward landed heavily. Vanessa could barely breathe normally, because every sentence Warren spoke revealed another layer she never knew existed. The man she mocked for driving deliveries spoke with the kind of precision senior executives spent decades trying to fake. No rambling, no ego, just command. Trevor attempted one final recovery. "Every proposal goes through revisions. We're fully capable of adjusting." Warren nodded slightly. "I'm sure you are." Then he closed the binder. "But Northline won't be moving forward with Halstead and Burke." The words arrived gently. That made them worse. Trevor sat forward immediately. "You're rejecting the proposal." "Yes, over procurement discrepancies. Among other things." Trevor's composure cracked further. "You're making a mistake." "No," Warren said quietly. "I'm preventing one." Vanessa stared at Warren across the table. For years she thought silence meant weakness. Now she realized silence could also mean certainty. Trevor exhaled sharply through his nose. "This is personal." There it was, the mistake Warren had been waiting for. Warren tilted his head slightly. "Personal. You're angry because your wife works with me." The room froze. Vanessa felt humiliation rush hot across her face. Daniel Reed's expression hardened immediately. Frank Coleman stopped writing. Even Trevor seemed to realize too late what he had just admitted indirectly. But Warren remained calm, almost unnaturally calm. "My marriage," Warren said evenly, "has nothing to do with your inflated billing structure." Trevor leaned back, cornered now by his own impatience. "You expect me to believe this isn't retaliation?" Warren folded his hands together. "No. I expect you to understand that Northline evaluates performance using evidence." That sentence ended the discussion. Not emotionally, structurally. Trevor knew it too. The meeting was over long before anyone stood up. Vanessa looked down at her notes scattered across the table. Bullet points, brand language, executive positioning strategy. All meaningless now. Because she suddenly understood the scale of what she had failed to see. Warren had not become successful overnight. He had built an empire quietly while everyone around him laughed. And she helped them laugh. That realization hurt in a way embarrassment alone could not. Daniel stood first. "We'll have legal follow-up regarding vendor disclosures." Trevor rose immediately. "This isn't finished." Warren looked at him steadily. "No," he agreed. "It probably isn't." The room began clearing slowly. Junior staff avoided eye contact while gathering laptops and presentation binders. Nobody knew where to look. Vanessa remained seated 2 seconds longer than everyone else. Then she finally stood. Warren was already speaking quietly with Daniel near the windows overlooking Broad Street. For the first time in years, Vanessa saw him in his actual environment, not pretending, not reduced, not surviving, leading. Employees passing outside the boardroom acknowledged him immediately. Executives deferred naturally when he spoke. The entire building moved around his decisions, and she had spent years apologizing for him socially. Trevor touched her elbow sharply. "Come on." Vanessa followed numbly toward the exit. As they reached the doorway, Warren spoke without raising his voice. "Vanessa." She stopped instantly, slowly turned. The room behind Warren glowed with cold daylight from the skyline windows. He looked composed, controlled. But there was something else now, too. Distance, not hatred, something quieter, more final. Warren glanced briefly toward the proposal materials still left scattered across the table. Then back at her. "You forgot this." He picked up the leather notebook Vanessa brought for the presentation and handed it toward her. Their fingers almost touched. Vanessa noticed something painfully small then. Warren still wore his wedding ring. Trevor already moved impatiently toward the elevator lobby. Vanessa took the notebook carefully. Neither spoke for a moment. Finally, she managed, "Warren, I didn't know." And for the first time all morning, emotion flickered faintly across Warren's face. Not anger, disappointment, deep enough to hollow the voice when he answered. That he said quietly was the problem. Then he walked back toward the boardroom windows without looking behind him again. Vanessa Hughes sat inside her Mercedes for nearly 20 minutes after leaving Northline Dynamics. She didn't start the engine immediately. Downtown Columbus moved around her in distorted reflections through the windshield. People crossed intersections carrying coffee. Buses hissed to curbs. Snow drifted lightly between glass towers. Nothing outside looked different, but inside her chest something had collapsed completely. Warren, Northline, founder and majority owner. The words kept replaying against each other like broken machinery. She remembered the rust around his truck wheel well, the warehouse jackets, the brown paper lunches, every time she introduced him vaguely at corporate events, because she felt embarrassed explaining what he did. Now every memory rearranged itself into humiliation. Her phone buzzed violently against the center console. Trevor. Vanessa stared at the screen before answering. What the hell was that Trevor snapped immediately? Vanessa closed her eyes. "I don't know. You didn't know your husband owned Northline number." Trevor let out a disbelieving laugh. "That's insane." Vanessa gripped the steering wheel harder. "I said I didn't know." Trevor lowered his voice slightly, but anger still bled through. He targeted us. "No," Vanessa said quietly. The truth hurt physically. He didn't. Trevor went silent for half a second, because deep down he understood it too. Warren had not ambushed them emotionally. He had evaluated them professionally, and they failed. Trevor cursed under his breath. This vendor issue could become a problem. Vanessa turned toward the Northline Tower, still visible through traffic. "Were those numbers real?" Trevor answered too slowly. "Trevor, it's normal sourcing." "That's not what I asked." Another silence. Then, "Just don't panic yet." The call ended minutes later without comfort, without a plan. Trevor always sounded powerful in conference rooms, less so when systems started closing around him. Vanessa finally drove home through freezing afternoon traffic. The Maple Ridge house looked exactly the same from outside. Brick exterior, white trim. Front porch Warren repaired himself 2 summers earlier because contractors overquoted the work. At the time, Vanessa thought he fixed it because they couldn't afford better. Now she realized Warren probably repaired it simply because he disliked waste. That realization unsettled her more than money itself. Inside the house, silence pressed heavily through the rooms. Warren wasn't home yet. Vanessa walked slowly through the kitchen. Everything suddenly looked different. The knives Warren sharpened himself. The coffee grinder he repaired twice instead of replacing. The basement door beneath which he spent years working on ideas. How had she missed all of it? Her eyes landed on the unopened Cartier box still sitting near the dining room sideboard. The anniversary gift. Vanessa approached it carefully, almost fearfully. When she opened the lid and saw the vintage watch inside her throat tightened instantly. She remembered pointing at that exact model years ago in Chicago while they were still happy. Warren remembered too. Of course he did. That was the worst part. Warren always noticed things. She sat down slowly at the dining table and held the watch in trembling hands. Outside, snow tapped lightly against the windows. At 5:47 p.m., the front door opened. Warren entered carrying his dark overcoat folded over one arm. No delivery uniform, no work boots, just the navy suit from the boardroom. Vanessa stood immediately. For a second, neither spoke. Warren placed his keys carefully on the counter. "You're home early," he said calmly. Vanessa stared at him. How long? Warren loosened his tie slightly. How long what? How long have you owned Northline? Several years. That's not an answer. Warren looked at her quietly. Long enough. Vanessa laughed once softly. Not because anything was funny, because shock sometimes sounded like laughter before grief arrived. You let me believe, she stopped herself. Warren waited. That you were struggling. I never said that. You drove a delivery truck. I still do sometimes. Why? Because I like understanding the ground level of the system. The answer sounded so logical it made Vanessa angry. You could have told me. Warren's eyes rested on her for several seconds. You stopped asking. The sentence landed hard because it was true. Vanessa turned away toward the kitchen island. This is insane. Warren removed his watch and set it beside the sink carefully. No, he said quietly. It's private. Vanessa looked back sharply. So this whole time everyone laughed at you, and you just let it happen. Warren met her gaze evenly. People usually reveal themselves when they think you're beneath them. Silence. Cold and heavy. Vanessa suddenly remembered every dinner at Megan's house, every joke Scott made, every time Warren stayed calm while everyone treated him like background furniture. And Warren had simply watched, not weak, observing. Her stomach twisted. Finally, she asked the question underneath everything else. Did you know about Trevor? Warren did not answer immediately. That frightened her more than yelling would have. I knew enough. How long? A while. Vanessa felt heat rising into her face. Warren, I'm not interested in explanations tonight. The calmness in his voice felt almost unbearable now, because Warren wasn't fighting for the marriage anymore. Vanessa could hear it. She stepped closer. It wasn't serious. Warren almost smiled at that. Not amused, tired. You canceled our anniversary dinner. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it again, because he was right. And worse, he said it without cruelty. Just fact. Warren walked toward the kitchen drawer and removed a thick manila envelope. He placed it gently on the counter between them. Vanessa looked down. Mercer and Kane Family Law. Something icy moved through her chest. What is this? Warren answered quietly. Read it. Her fingers suddenly felt numb opening the envelope. Inside sat formal legal documents. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Asset disclosure notices. Temporary financial agreements. Her eyes moved rapidly across the pages, then stopped. Olivia Mercer. She had heard the name before. One of the best high-asset divorce attorneys in Ohio. Vanessa looked up sharply. You already filed yes. When? This morning. Her breathing changed. You planned this. Warren leaned lightly against the counter. I prepared. The distinction mattered deeply to him. Vanessa saw that now. He had not exploded emotionally after discovering Trevor. He had built structure around the damage first, just like business, just like systems. Her voice rose slightly for the first time. You blindsided me. Warren looked genuinely confused by that. Did I? The words hit harder than shouting. Vanessa set the papers down. You hid an entire empire from me. I hid ownership, Warren corrected calmly. Not myself. That's ridiculous. No, Warren said. You stopped seeing me because you thought you already understood my value. Silence swallowed the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed softly in the background. Snow continued drifting outside. Vanessa stared at the legal documents again. Then another line caught her eye. Separate protected business entities established prior to valuation expansion. She looked up sharply. What does this mean? Warren answered evenly. Northline is protected. How protected? Very. Vanessa felt real panic for the first time all day. Not because of greed, because she suddenly realized how thoroughly Warren had prepared. Accounts separated, ownership layered, structures established years earlier. He had been building defenses long before she even noticed the marriage breaking. You planned for this, she whispered. Warren looked exhausted suddenly. No, he said softly. I planned for uncertainty. That sentence told her everything about the difference between them. Vanessa reacted emotionally. Warren built systems, even now, especially now. Her phone buzzed again. Trevor. Warren's eyes moved briefly toward the screen lighting across the counter. Vanessa silenced it immediately. Too late. Both of them saw the name. Warren picked up his coat again. "Where are you going?" Vanessa asked. "Downtown. At this hour. I have work." The phrase crushed her unexpectedly, because now she finally understood what his work actually meant. Before leaving, Warren paused near the doorway. Then he looked back once toward the unopened divorce packet still spread across the counter. "I never cared about people underestimating me," he said quietly. Vanessa stared at him silently. Warren's expression hardened just slightly. "But I cared that you joined them." Then he walked out into the falling snow while the front door closed softly behind him. And for the first time since meeting him 20 years earlier, Vanessa Hughes realized she no longer understood the man she married at all. Trevor Callahan stopped sleeping well 3 days after the Northline meeting. By the following Monday, the dark circles beneath his eyes had become visible even under the polished lighting inside Halstead and Burke's executive offices. He compensated the only way men like him knew how. Volume, speed, control. "Where are we on the Horizon account?" he snapped at a junior strategist during the morning review meeting. "We're waiting on revised numbers from Then Don't Wait. Push them." Nobody argued. Nobody ever argued directly with Trevor when he sounded like that. But something inside the agency had shifted. People sensed weakness faster than blood in water. The Northline disaster spread quietly through leadership circles by the weekend. Not publicly, not online. Corporate humiliation rarely moved through headlines first. It moved through phone calls, partner conversations, closed-door lunches, phrases like, "Something went wrong over there." And Northline rejected them personally. And worst of all, "You know who owns Northline, right?" Trevor hated that part most, because the story made him look foolish. Not Warren. Meanwhile, Warren Hughes continued operating exactly as before. That unsettled Vanessa more than anything. He still woke before sunrise, still reviewed freight metrics at the kitchen counter, still drove the Ford truck twice a week to warehouse facilities despite owning enough wealth to disappear from work forever. No dramatic speeches, no revenge performances, just systems continuing forward. Vanessa barely slept anymore. The Maple Ridge house had become unbearably quiet. Not hostile. Worse, controlled. Warren moved through rooms politely but distantly, like a man already emotionally relocated elsewhere. Some nights he stayed downtown at the Northline executive residence attached to the headquarters tower. Other nights he came home late and worked silently in the basement office until 2 in the morning. Vanessa attempted conversations twice. Both ended quickly. Not because Warren yelled, because he no longer reacted. And indifference frightened her more than anger ever could. Tuesday morning, Vanessa entered Halstead and Burke's lobby and immediately sensed tension. Conversations stopped too quickly. People avoided eye contact. One executive assistant nearly dropped a folder after seeing her. Vanessa walked faster toward the elevators. Inside the 12th floor executive suite, Trevor stood outside his office, speaking sharply with 2 men in dark suits Vanessa did not recognize. One carried a leather portfolio. The other wore an internal compliance badge. Trevor noticed her approaching and immediately forced a smile. "Vanessa, give us a minute." The men entered Trevor's office without greeting her. Vanessa stood frozen outside the glass wall conference room. 20 minutes later, Trevor stepped out alone. His expression looked tight around the jaw. "What's going on?" Vanessa asked quietly. Trevor adjusted his cufflinks. "Routine audit. Because of Northline. Because corporate boards panic whenever legal hears the word vendor." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Are you in trouble?" Trevor laughed once. "Too fast." "No." But Vanessa heard it immediately. Fear. Small. Hidden. Real. Trevor lowered his voice. "Listen carefully. If anyone asks questions about campaign sourcing, you direct them to procurement." "Understood?" Vanessa stared at him. "Trevor, understood." "Yes." He nodded sharply and disappeared back into his office. Vanessa stood motionless afterward. For the first time since the affair began, she realized Trevor might not actually be in control of anything. That afternoon, Warren sat inside Northline's executive operations room, reviewing expansion forecasts with Daniel Reed. Large digital maps glowed across the walls, displaying shipment density between Chicago, Nashville, Columbus, and Louisville. Daniel handed over another file. Halstead's internal audit officially started. Warren read the memo briefly. Expense Review Committee, vendor compliance investigation, temporary financial access suspension for several executives. Warren placed the file down calmly. Trevor lawyering up already. Warren nodded once. Daniel studied him carefully. You know, most people would have burned him down publicly by now. Warren kept reviewing shipment routes. That's emotional. He slept with your wife. Yes. Daniel leaned back slightly. And you're still this calm. Warren looked toward the operations floor below. Employees moved quickly between data stations while freight systems updated in real time across the country. Anger doesn't improve outcomes, Warren said quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. You really are built differently. No, Warren answered. I just learned early that systems outlast emotions. His phone buzzed once. Olivia Mercer. Warren answered immediately. Afternoon, Olivia said. Any updates? Yes. Vanessa retained counsel this morning. Warren listened silently. Also, Olivia continued, your documentation timing was excellent, meaning the separation between protected business growth and marital assets is extremely strong. Warren walked slowly toward the glass overlooking Broad Street. Below, traffic flowed steadily through downtown Columbus. Olivia's voice remained calm and clinical. The ownership layers, pre-expansion trusts, and holding entities were established early enough that most of Northline is insulated. Warren closed his eyes briefly. Not relief, just confirmation. Olivia continued. She'll likely challenge valuation timing, but honestly, your preparation was unusually disciplined. That word again. Preparation. Warren thanked her quietly before ending the call. Preparation sounded colder than pain. But pain without preparation destroyed people. He had seen that too many times already in business. Across town, Vanessa sat inside her office, staring at an email she had reread 6 times. Mandatory internal review meeting, attendance required. Thursday, 9 a.m. The sender was Halstead and Burke Corporate Compliance. Below the message sat another email from Trevor. Don't panic. This is procedural. Vanessa no longer believed him. She opened her desk drawer and looked at the divorce papers Warren served days earlier. The documents frightened her now in ways money never had before. Because Warren had not acted like a betrayed husband. He acted like a strategist responding to structural failure. Every step already planned, every document already prepared, every emotional reaction removed from the process. And suddenly Vanessa understood something humiliating. Warren probably predicted Trevor would collapse under pressure long before she did. That evening, Megan called. So, Megan began carefully. Is it true Vanessa sat alone in the kitchen while snow drifted outside? What part? That Warren owns Northline Dynamics. Vanessa closed her eyes. Yes. Silence exploded across the line. Oh my God! Vanessa said nothing. Megan lowered her voice. Scott says Northline's worth billions. Vanessa stared toward the basement door. He built it himself. Another silence, then Megan asked the question Vanessa dreaded most. You knew, right? Vanessa swallowed hard. No. Megan exhaled sharply. Jesus. Not sympathy, shock, because suddenly the entire family hierarchy had inverted overnight. Scott Doyle's BMW, the Scottsdale vacations, the expensive wine displays, all of it looked tiny now. Vanessa ended the call quickly afterward. She couldn't tolerate hearing amazement in other people's voices when she still felt buried beneath humiliation herself. Around 10:30 p.m., Warren returned home. Snow dusted the shoulders of his dark coat. He entered quietly carrying his laptop bag and a stack of printed reports. Vanessa stood near the kitchen island waiting. We need to talk. Warren removed his gloves slowly. We've talked. No, she said. Not really. He looked tired, not broken, just exhausted in a deep, controlled way. Vanessa stepped closer. Why didn't you ever tell me Warren set the reports down carefully? Would it have changed anything? Yes. The answer came too quickly. Warren noticed. So did she. He looked at her for several long seconds before speaking again. That's what hurts. Vanessa felt tears threatening finally. Not because of money, because she understood what he meant. If his value depended on revealing wealth first, then maybe she never truly saw him at all. Warren picked up the reports again. Trevor's audit escalated today, he said quietly. Vanessa stared. How do you know that people talk? No, she whispered. You made this happen. Warren's expression hardened slightly for the first time all evening. No, he said calmly. Trevor made it happen when he confused shortcuts for intelligence. The difference mattered deeply to him. Warren never believed justice came from revenge. He believed systems eventually exposed weak structures, in logistics, in business, in people. Vanessa looked at the man standing across from her and suddenly realized something chilling. Warren Hughes had spent years quietly learning how things failed beneath the surface. And once he recognized failure inside his own marriage, he prepared for it exactly the same way. The Maple Ridge house sounded different when a marriage was ending. Every noise carried farther. Cabinet doors, footsteps upstairs, the low hum of the refrigerator at night. Silence stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling architectural, like empty rooms expanding around two people who no longer belonged inside the same life. 3 weeks after the Northline meeting, Warren Hughes began moving things out quietly. Not dramatically. No shouting, no moving trucks parked outside for neighbors to watch. Just small absences accumulating one by one. A few tailored suits disappeared from the closet, then books from the basement office. Then framed photographs Vanessa suddenly noticed missing from hallway shelves. Warren handled separation the same way he handled business transitions, methodically. Vanessa watched it happen with growing panic, because Warren never threatened to leave. He simply began existing elsewhere. That Thursday night, snow fell steadily across Columbus, while Warren stood alone in the basement office packing files into dark storage boxes. The room looked cleaner already, less personal. The old oak desk remained beneath soft monitor light, while routing systems continued updating freight movement across multiple states. Northline never slowed. Neither did Warren. Upstairs, Vanessa stood near the basement doorway for almost a minute before speaking. You're really doing this? Warren sealed another box. Yes. She descended slowly, bare feet against wooden stairs, oversized sweater, no makeup. For the first time in years, she looked less like a polished executive and more like the woman Warren married in their 20s. That made this harder, not easier. Vanessa stopped beside the desk. You're moving out, for now. You already have somewhere to stay. Yes. The apartment at Northline. Warren nodded once. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself. You planned everything. Warren looked at her quietly. I prepared for possibilities. There's a difference, yes. He stacked another folder inside the box. Vanessa watched him carefully. Every movement remained calm, organized, even now, especially now. What happens after this? She asked softly. Warren paused, then resumed packing. We finalized the divorce. That's it. Warren finally looked directly at her. What exactly are you asking me for, Vanessa? The question hit harder than anger, because there was no cruelty in it, only exhaustion. Vanessa struggled suddenly to explain herself. She didn't even fully understand what she wanted anymore. Forgiveness. Another chance. Proof. Warren still loved her enough to fight emotionally. Instead, she asked the wrong question. How much are you actually worth? The second the words left her mouth, she regretted them. Warren's expression changed almost invisibly. Not rage. Disappointment. Deep and final. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, Warren said quietly. You did. Silence settled heavily through the basement. Outside wind pushed snow against the small ground-level windows. Vanessa looked around the office slowly. She suddenly noticed details she ignored for years. The walls covered in freight maps, technical diagrams, shipping flowcharts, Notebooks stacked carefully by date. This room wasn't a hobby space. It was a command center, and she never bothered understanding it because she already decided Warren's work mattered less than hers. That realization cut deeper each day. Her phone buzzed upstairs faintly. Probably Megan. Maybe Trevor. Trevor barely called now unless necessary. That changed too. Once Halstead and Burke's internal audit expanded, Trevor became difficult to reach. More defensive, more distracted, less charming. Vanessa finally understood that men like Trevor looked powerful only while systems protected them. Under pressure, the polish cracked fast. Warren carried another box toward the stairs. Vanessa stepped aside automatically. Then quietly, "Did you ever love me?" Warren stopped halfway up. For several seconds, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded tired in a way she had never heard before. "I built my whole life beside you." Vanessa felt tears rise instantly, because that was the answer, and because it hurt more than if he had simply said yes. Warren continued upstairs. Vanessa followed slowly behind him. The living room looked unusually bare already. Several shelves stood half empty. The leather chair Warren always used near the fireplace was gone. "You took the chair." "I bought it before we got married." "Oh." Another silence. Warren set the box near the front door. Vanessa looked toward the dining room table where the Cartier watch still rested inside its open case. She never wore it, couldn't. Every time she looked at it, shame surfaced immediately afterward. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Warren stood very still. Snow drifted beyond the front windows under pale streetlights. For what he asked quietly. The question broke something inside her because there were too many answers. For Trevor. For laughing. For letting Megan and Scott mock him. For seeing status before character. For not noticing the man beside her while chasing validation from strangers. Vanessa lowered her head. For all of it. Warren studied her silently. Years ago, he would have crossed the room after hearing pain in her voice. Would have comforted her automatically. Now distance remained between them like another physical structure inside the house. Finally, he said, "I kept waiting for you to look at me differently." Vanessa looked up. Warren's voice stayed controlled. "But eventually I realized you only respected things other people admired first." The truth landed brutally because it aligned perfectly with everything she now saw clearly. The luxury offices, Trevor's executive image, Scott's expensive lifestyle, even Northline itself. If Warren had revealed his wealth earlier, she would have valued him differently. And Warren knew it. That was the unforgivable part, not the affair. The conditional respect. Vanessa wiped at her eyes quickly. "You think I'm that shallow?" Warren answered honestly. "I think you stopped seeing substance once appearances disappointed you. No shouting, no insults, just observation. That made it devastating." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked as the heating system kicked on. The house suddenly felt unbearably cold. Vanessa stepped closer carefully. "What if I want to fix this?" Warren looked at her for a long time before answering. "You don't even know what broke first." The sentence hollowed the room. Because she didn't. Not fully. Maybe the marriage started collapsing long before Trevor. Maybe it began the first time she looked embarrassed introducing Warren socially. Or the first time she laughed with Megan instead of defending him. Or the first time she decided his worth depended on visible success. Vanessa realized something terrifying then. Trevor was not the cause. He was evidence. Warren picked up his coat from the chair near the door. "I'll be at the downtown residence for a while." "How long?" "I don't know." Vanessa looked around the nearly empty living room. "You're just leaving me here." Warren's expression darkened slightly. "No," he said quietly. "You left a long time ago." The words hit with absolute precision. No wasted cruelty, no dramatic performance, just truth. Warren opened the front door. Cold air rushed inside, carrying swirling snowflakes beneath the porch light. Before stepping out, he paused briefly without turning around. Then he said the sentence Vanessa would replay in her mind for months afterward. "I could have handled losing money," Warren said softly. "I could have handled failure." He looked back at her then. "But I never thought I'd have to convince my own wife I was worth respecting." The door closed gently behind him. Vanessa stood motionless in the silent house, listening to Warren's footsteps fade across the snow-covered walkway. Then the engine of the dark Range Rover started outside. A moment later, headlights swept across the front windows and disappeared into the winter night, leaving the Maple Ridge house colder than it had ever felt before. And for the first time since the divorce papers arrived, Vanessa Hughes finally understood something irreversible. Warren wasn't leaving because he hated her. He was leaving because he no longer believed she truly saw him at all. The mediation office on East Long Street smelled like polished wood and neutral air. Everything inside was designed to remove emotion. Beige walls, soft lighting, a long conference table that looked like it had heard too many endings and stopped reacting to them. Vanessa Hughes arrived first. She sat with her attorney, a middle-aged man named Harold Kent, who kept adjusting his glasses while reviewing documents he had already read 3 times. "You need to stay calm," Harold whispered. Vanessa didn't respond, because calm wasn't the problem anymore. Understanding was. A few minutes later, Warren Hughes entered with Olivia Mercer. No hesitation in his steps, no visible tension. Same controlled presence as always, but quieter now. More distant, like a system running in background mode after a major decision has already been finalized. Vanessa noticed something immediately. He wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to complete a process. Olivia placed a thick folder on the table and nodded politely to Harold. "Good morning," she said. Harold returned the greeting cautiously. Everyone sat. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Olivia opened the file. "We can proceed directly to terms unless there are preliminary objections," she said. Harold cleared his throat. "There are concerns regarding asset valuation timing and marital contribution ratios." Olivia didn't look surprised. She simply turned a page. Standard challenge, not relevant to structural ownership protections. Vanessa felt her stomach tighten. Structural ownership. That phrase again. Everything in Warren's life now seemed to revolve around structures she never knew existed. Harold leaned slightly forward. "We are requesting equitable division of marital assets, including shared appreciation of business holdings during the marriage period." Olivia nodded once. "Then we will need to clarify a distinction," she said calmly. She looked toward Vanessa for the first time. "Between assets created during marriage and assets positioned prior to marital appreciation events." Vanessa frowned slightly. Harold shifted in his seat. Olivia continued. "Northline Dynamics was established and structured through Hughes Strategic Holdings prior to its valuation escalation period. The controlling interest was insulated through layered trusts and operating entities before the company reached its current scale." Harold flipped pages quickly. "This doesn't negate marital contribution. It does," Olivia replied evenly, "when contribution is not operational or financial." Silence followed. Vanessa looked at Warren instinctively. He didn't react. He wasn't even watching her. He was looking at the table, calm, detached, as if this wasn't personal anymore. That realization hurt more than anything so far. Harold tried again. "Your client is suggesting zero spousal equity in a multi-billion-dollar enterprise." Olivia finally leaned back slightly. "I am suggesting the enterprise was never jointly owned." She slid another document forward. "This is the trust structure timeline. This is the acquisition sequence. And this is the valuation insulation framework established years before marital dissolution indicators." Harold studied it. Slowly his expression changed, because he understood what he was looking at. This wasn't improvisation. It was architecture, carefully built over time. Vanessa felt her hands go cold. She whispered without meaning to, "You planned all of this." Warren finally looked at her. Not sharply, not emotionally, just present. "I planned for stability," he said quietly. Harold exhaled. "This is going to be difficult to challenge in court." Olivia nodded once. "It will be expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately unlikely to succeed." Vanessa's chest tightened. Not because of money, because she realized she was losing something she didn't even fully understand until it was gone. Control. Harold lowered his voice. "We may need to negotiate settlement terms." Olivia slid a second document across the table. "Here are proposed settlement conditions." Vanessa glanced down. The numbers were precise. Not cruel, not generous, balanced, fair. That somehow hurt more. Because Warren wasn't trying to destroy her. He was just closing the system. Harold scanned quickly. This includes equity adjustment for shared household assets, relocation support, and financial transition structure. Olivia nodded. Correct. Vanessa looked at Warren again. Is that it? She asked quietly. Warren hesitated for the first time, just briefly. Then, yes. One word, clean, final. Vanessa swallowed hard. So this is just done. Warren didn't answer immediately, and when he did, his voice stayed calm. It was done when trust stopped being reciprocal. Silence again. Not dramatic, just heavy. Harold leaned toward Vanessa. We should consider this carefully. But Vanessa wasn't listening. She was watching Warren, trying to find something inside his expression. Anger, regret, anything. There was nothing. Only resolution. That scared her most, because she realized something fundamental. Warren had already emotionally exited this marriage long before legal papers existed. This meeting was just documentation catching up to reality. Harold cleared his throat. We may need time to review. Olivia closed her folder. You have 72 hours before terms are finalized. The meeting began to end. Papers gathered, chairs shifted. No one said anything personal, because nothing personal remained in the room. As Warren stood, Vanessa spoke again. Warren, he paused, didn't turn fully, just enough to acknowledge. I didn't marry you because I didn't respect you, she said quickly. That made him look at her properly. For the first time in the entire meeting, Vanessa continued, voice unstable now. I stopped understanding you. Warren studied her for a long moment. Then he said something quieter than everything else so far. Understanding wasn't required. That sentence landed differently, because it wasn't accusation, it was observation, and it revealed the gap between them more clearly than any legal document. Warren nodded once to Olivia. Then he left the room. No hesitation. No backward glance. Just forward movement, like a system that had completed its final output and shut down unnecessary processes. Vanessa remained seated long after the others stood. Harold placed a hand gently on her shoulder. We can negotiate, he said softly, but Vanessa barely heard him, because her mind was still inside Warren's last sentence. Understanding wasn't required. Outside the mediation office, Warren stepped into cold afternoon air. Snow had stopped. The city felt clearer, sharper. Daniel Reed was waiting by the car. How did it go? Daniel asked. Warren adjusted his coat. Expected. Daniel studied him carefully. You okay? Warren paused, looked at downtown traffic moving steadily below them. Then he answered honestly. I've been okay for a while. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood what that meant. As they walked toward the vehicle, Warren's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it, then it buzzed again and again. Finally, he glanced once. Vanessa. He didn't answer. Not because he was angry, but because nothing new would be said anymore. Everything important had already been spoken. Inside the mediation office, Vanessa sat alone after Harold left to make calls. The settlement documents lay in front of her, final versions now, not drafts, not proposals. Reality. She picked up her phone again, stared at Warren's name. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but she didn't press it, because suddenly she wasn't sure what she would even say. I'm sorry felt too small. I understand now felt too late. I love you. Felt like something she only remembered how to say after losing the context that made it meaningful. So she did nothing. And for the first time, Vanessa understood what Warren had been doing all along. Not waiting, not reacting, just continuing forward without her. That evening, Warren stood alone inside the Northline executive apartment overlooking Columbus. Floor-to-ceiling windows lit the room with the glow of city lights. Below, traffic moved like veins of light through winter darkness. Daniel had already left. Olivia had sent final legal confirmations. Everything was in motion. Everything was complete. Warren poured a glass of water and stood near the window. Somewhere across the city, Vanessa Hughes was probably sitting with the consequences of decisions she didn't fully understand until they were irreversible. Warren took a slow breath. Not relief, not satisfaction, just closure, the kind that doesn't feel like winning, only ending. His phone lit once more. This time he looked at it longer. Still Vanessa. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned off the screen and watched the city continue moving forward without stopping for anyone, just like systems always did. Winter in Columbus didn't feel like weather anymore. It felt like absence, the kind that stayed inside buildings even after people turned up the heat. Vanessa Hughes noticed it most in the mornings when she still followed her old routine out of habit. Coffee from Alder and Finch, cross Broad Street. Avoid looking at Northline Dynamics. That part had become impossible, because the building no longer felt like architecture. It felt like memory. And memory had teeth now. 2 weeks after mediation, Vanessa stopped going to Halstead and Burke. She told HR it was personal leave. They didn't ask questions. They already knew enough. Corporate environments always knew more than they said. They just waited for confirmation before acting on it. Trevor Callahan's name disappeared from internal emails first, then from project threads, then from office conversations, finally from the building itself. He resigned on a Friday morning. No farewell meeting, no announcement, just absence. Vanessa heard about it through a junior strategist whispering in the elevator. Compliance escalated everything the girl said. Vendor fraud stuff. It got ugly fast. Vanessa didn't respond, because she already understood. Trevor had not been removed because of emotion. He had been removed because systems had finished evaluating him. That realization reminded her of Warren. Everything reminded her of Warren now. That was the problem. Back at Maple Ridge, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like an unfinished sentence. Warren had taken most of his things, but not everything. Some furniture remained. The kitchen still smelled faintly like his coffee. The basement office still carried his presence in the silence between machines. Vanessa found herself standing there one night at 2 a.m., staring at the empty chair where he used to sit. She didn't cry immediately, she just sat down, like she was waiting for something to explain itself. But nothing did. Across town, Warren Hughes stood inside Northline Dynamics' top-floor operations lounge. The city stretched beneath him like a map of systems in motion. Freight data flowed across screens, Chicago routes, Nashville expansion logistics, Louisville recalibrations, everything moving, everything aligned. Daniel Reed entered quietly. "You've been working non-stop," Daniel said. "I'm fine. You haven't taken a day off in 3 weeks." Warren didn't look away from the glass. Systems don't take days off. Daniel exhaled slowly. "That's not what I meant." Warren finally turned slightly. "What did you mean?" Daniel hesitated, then chose his words carefully. "You're not in survival mode anymore." A pause. Then, "You're in avoidance." That landed. Warren didn't respond immediately, because Daniel wasn't wrong. For months, Warren had operated purely on structure. Build. Correct. Secure. Execute. No emotional processing, only forward motion. That worked in business, less so in life. Finally, Warren said quietly, "There's nothing to avoid." Daniel shook his head. "That's not true." But he didn't push further. He understood Warren better than most people did. Sometimes silence wasn't denial. It was containment. That same night, Vanessa drove without destination. Her car moved through downtown Columbus, slowly passing buildings she once associated with ambition. Now everything felt hollow. She stopped near the river bridge and parked. Cold wind moved across the water below. Lights from passing cars stretched across the surface like broken reflections. Vanessa stared at her phone. Warren's name, still saved, still there, still unreachable. She thought about calling him for almost 10 minutes, but every version of the conversation collapsed before it began. "What are you doing? I'm working. I miss you. I know." Nothing she imagined led anywhere meaningful, because Warren no longer existed in a place where emotion could redirect him. He had already moved past that stage. Back at Northline, Warren reviewed a final expansion report alone. The room was quiet except for soft system alerts. Daniel had gone home. Security had reduced staff presence for the night cycle. Warren signed off on 3 capital reallocations, then paused. For the first time in days, his focus drifted, not toward work, toward memory. Vanessa sitting across from him at dinner years ago, laughing too easily at Scott's jokes, not defending him, not seeing him. He remembered the exact moment it shifted, not the betrayal, the indifference that came before it. That was always the real ending point in relationships, not the action, the absence of recognition. Warren closed the report slowly, then turned off the main display wall. The operations room dimmed instantly. For a moment, he just stood there in silence. Then he picked up his coat. That weekend, Vanessa received a letter, not email, physical envelope, delivered to Maple Ridge, no return address needed. She recognized Olivia Mercer's name immediately. Inside were finalized settlement documents, clean, official, irreversible. But at the bottom of the packet, one additional page was attached. Not legal, personal. Vanessa hesitated before reading it. The handwriting was Warren's, short, precise, no embellishment, just 3 lines. I never underestimated you. I just stopped recognizing myself in the version of me you believed in. I hope you find clarity. That's all I ever wanted for both of us. Vanessa sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. The paper trembled slightly in her hands. Not from shock, from weight. Because for the first time she understood something she had avoided for years. Warren hadn't changed. He had simply stopped translating himself into a language she refused to learn. Meanwhile, across the city, Warren stood outside Northline's glass entrance watching snow begin to fall again. Employees passed him respectfully. No one spoke loudly. The building always adjusted to his presence without announcement. Daniel approached beside him. Everything finalized with Halstead, Daniel said. Warren nodded. Good. A pause. Then Daniel added carefully, you could expand into West Coast markets next quarter. Warren looked at the city skyline, lights flickering across frozen air. Maybe. Daniel studied him. You sound uncertain. Warren answered honestly. I'm just deciding what comes after structure. Daniel nodded slowly. That's new. Warren didn't respond, because it was. For years, everything had been about building. Now, for the first time, he was being forced to consider what remained after everything was built. Later that night, Warren drove alone through empty Columbus streets. He didn't go to the apartment, didn't go to the office. He ended up near the river bridge without planning it. The same place Vanessa had been the night before. He parked a few meters away but did not see her. He simply sat, engine off, snow falling gently against the windshield. For the first time in a long time, Warren allowed himself to stop calculating. No systems, no projections, no outcomes, just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected surfaced. Not regret, not anger. Something quieter. A recognition that success built without shared understanding still felt incomplete. He stayed there for a long time, then finally started the car again and drove forward. Not because he was escaping anything, but because that was what systems did when they reached the edge of what they could solve. They continued. Spring arrived in Columbus without announcement. One week, the streets were still edged with dirty snow and salt stains, and the next, the wind carried something softer through downtown air, less sharp, less defensive. Northline dynamics changed with it, not dramatically, not visibly, but in structure. Warren Hughes had always believed systems revealed their maturity through stability, not expansion. That belief shaped everything that followed. Inside the 28th floor operations center, dashboards continued to update in real time freight movement across states, optimization models, recalibrating distribution systems, adjusting to demand curves. But Warren no longer lived inside those screens the way he used to. Something had shifted after the River Bridge night. Not emotional collapse, not healing in the traditional sense. Something quieter. Reorientation. He started arriving later, leaving earlier. Delegating decisions he once held tightly. Daniel Reed noticed first. You're stepping back, Daniel said one afternoon. Warren didn't deny it. I built it to run without me. That was never the point. Warren looked at him calmly. Wasn't it? Daniel hesitated, because the truth was complicated. Northline was efficient because Warren had made it so. But Northline was also human in ways Warren never fully admitted. And now the absence of his constant control changed the atmosphere. Not negatively, just differently. Like a machine that still works after the engineer stops standing beside it. At Maple Ridge, Vanessa Hughes lived in a version of silence she had never experienced before. Not absence of noise, absence of direction. She no longer went to Halstead and Burke. Her resignation had been accepted without resistance. There was no dramatic fallout, no public explanation. Corporate life had already moved on. People always moved on faster than she expected. That was something she and Warren had finally shared in reverse roles. She spent most days sitting in places without purpose: coffee shops, Riverwalk benches, the empty dining room of the house. She didn't try to replace Warren with distractions. That wasn't possible. Instead, she tried something harder: understanding, slowly, painfully, reconstructing memory without ego attached. One afternoon, she visited Megan Doyle's house. Megan opened the door with cautious eyes. Vanessa. Vanessa stood there for a moment. I need to say something. Megan stepped aside. Inside, Scott was watching television. He turned his head when Vanessa entered, then quickly looked away again. The dynamic had changed between all of them now. Money stories didn't sound impressive anymore. They sounded small. Vanessa sat down across from them. I was wrong, she said simply. Megan blinked. Scott didn't respond immediately. Vanessa continued. I laughed at him. I let other people define him for me, and I never questioned it. Silence. Then Megan said softly, We all did. Vanessa shook her head. No, I let it. That distinction mattered, because leadership of perception carries weight. Scott finally spoke. He was always weird, though, he said defensively. Vanessa looked at him. That's not true. Scott frowned. He drove a truck. Vanessa didn't flinch. He built Northline Dynamics. That ended the conversation, because it removed all arguments. Facts do that. They don't negotiate. They settle. Later that week, Vanessa received another message. Not from Warren, from Olivia Mercer. A short note. Mr. Hughes requested final confirmation that settlement closure was received. No further action required. Vanessa read it 3 times. No further action required. It sounded legal, but it also sounded like emotional finality wrapped in professional language. That evening, Vanessa drove downtown again. Without intention. Without plan. Her car stopped outside Northline Dynamics almost automatically. The building looked different now, not larger, not smaller, just real. Not an idea of success. Actual success. She stood across the street for a long time before crossing. Security recognized her immediately, but didn't stop her. People still remembered her name, or at least her association. She entered the lobby. Everything still moved with controlled precision. She asked to speak with Warren Hughes. No one asked why. They simply called upstairs. 10 minutes later, Daniel Reed came down instead. Vanessa, he said gently. Is he here? Daniel nodded. He is. She hesitated. Can I see him? Daniel studied her carefully, then stepped aside. Top floor. The elevator ride felt longer than she remembered, or maybe she was different now. When the doors opened, Warren stood near the glass wall overlooking downtown Columbus. No suit jacket, just a simple shirt, sleeves rolled slightly. He looked up when she entered. No surprise. No tension, just recognition. Vanessa stopped a few steps inside the room. Neither spoke immediately. Outside the glass, the city moved like it always did. Warren finally said, You found your way here. Vanessa gave a faint, tired smile. I didn't plan it. I know. Silence again. But this time it wasn't heavy, just real. Vanessa looked at him carefully. You look different, she said. Warren nodded slightly. I am. That's not what I mean. He understood. She meant emotionally. He didn't argue. Instead, he said quietly, So are you. That was true too. Vanessa had stopped performing confidence, stopped chasing validation, stopped using other people's approval as measurement. For the first time in years, she looked like herself without layers built for audiences. I read what you wrote, she said softly. Warren didn't ask which part, because he already knew. I hope it made sense, he said. It did, she replied. Too much. Another silence passed between them. Then Vanessa asked something she had carried for weeks. Do you ever regret it? Warren looked out toward the skyline, Northline systems glowing beneath late afternoon light. I regret how long it took me to stop waiting, he said. Vanessa nodded slowly. That's fair. She stepped closer to the glass. You built something incredible. Warren didn't respond immediately. Then I built systems. Vanessa turned slightly. That's not what I mean. Warren looked at her for a long moment, then finally said, I know. That was the closest thing to acknowledgement he had given her in a long time. Vanessa exhaled slowly. I'm not here to change anything, she said. Warren nodded. I didn't think you were. She looked down briefly. I just needed to see it. The truth. Warren replied quietly. Most people don't. Vanessa smiled faintly. I used to be one of them. Warren didn't deny it, because it wasn't an accusation anymore, just history. Vanessa stepped back toward the elevator. At the doors, she paused. Warren. He looked at her. She hesitated, then simply said, Thank you for not becoming cruel. That landed quietly. Warren's expression softened slightly. I didn't have a reason to. Vanessa nodded once, then left. The doors closed. Silence returned. Daniel approached Warren after a few minutes. She'll be okay, Daniel said. Warren watched the city below. I know. Do you? Warren didn't answer immediately. Then, she already started being okay before she came here. Daniel studied him. And you? Warren took a slow breath. I'm still learning what comes after clarity. Daniel nodded. That's new for you. Yes. Outside, Columbus moved forward without pause. Inside, Northline Dynamics systems continued running, efficient, precise, stable. But for the first time in a long time, Warren Hughes didn't measure his life through output alone. He measured it through something quieter, understanding, and acceptance that even the most perfect systems could not prevent every human failure, only reveal it, then adapt, then continue, just like he always had, just differently now. Sometimes the most dangerous mistake in life is not failure, but misjudgment. Warren Hughes was never the man people thought he was. He was simply the man they stopped trying to understand. And once people stop looking closely, they start building entire stories based on assumptions instead of truth. What hurt him was not being underestimated by strangers, but being misread by someone who once knew his quiet strength better than anyone. Vanessa's journey shows something just as important. Recognition often comes too late, not because love disappears, but because awareness does. She didn't lose Warren in a single moment. She lost him slowly each time she chose appearance over depth, convenience over curiosity, and confidence over understanding. And by the time she finally saw the truth, Warren had already moved beyond needing to be seen. But this story is not about revenge. It is about structure, patience, and emotional discipline. Warren didn't win because he shouted louder. He won because he built something stable enough to survive misunderstanding. And in the end, his real strength was not his wealth, it was his restraint. If this story made you reflect on how easily we judge people without truly seeing them, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been misunderstood like Warren, or realized too late what someone truly meant to you? And if you enjoy deep emotional storytelling like this, subscribe to the channel. The next story will hit even harder.